Pixel 9 Pro XL. We are going to be reviewing this phone today, but some things are going to be a little bit different about the style of this review. First off, I normally take 5, 6, 7 days minimum to review a phone, but because I literally just reviewed the Pixel 9 Pro Fold and they share so very much in common, it really did not take me that long. We're sitting right around the 4-ish, 5-ish day mark. And also, because that video was over half an hour long, I'm going to try to speed through things a little bit more in this video and use a slightly different format where I give you 5 of the best things about the Pixel 9 Pro XL and 5 of the worst things about the Pixel 9 Pro XL. Starting off with a positive thing, a good thing, I'm just going to come right out and say it. The build quality, just the overall aesthetic, let's just call it broadly the hardware of the Pixel 9, in this instance the Pro XL, is absolutely fantastic. This truly does set a new high watermark for the Pixel brand. Of course, a lot of this is subjective. What do you think of the appearance of this device? You may look at this and say, man, the camera bump's really, really huge. But to me, I think that it looks really, really nice. They have adopted this flat side rail. Of course, on this model, it is glossy, which means it is an absolute fingerprint magnet, which I don't like. But again, it feels great in the hand. This backside is actually a matte material, which is great. I wish that that carried over onto the side, but whatever, it is what it is. I do find that the power button and volume rocker is well within reach. The fingerprint scanner is seemingly faster than it was last year in the last models. I never had like as big of a problem as a lot of people did, but I also have no complaints with it now. It seems to be quite fast. Face unlock is also here, and it is very, very fast. And what's really cool about this is that it is secure enough that if you fire up a banking application that can use authentication like that, I'm not going to show you my bank accounts, it's able to actually log you in. That is really cool. For people that really hammer home, bezels and things like that, they are small and they are uniform. No complaints really about the buttons and the placement of the buttons. They're, pretty easy to reach. I do wish they were a little bit lower, but no big complaints. The hardware, the build quality is top notch. Teeter-tottering back towards the negative side of things, as we're going to do throughout this video, something that is in my bad category is just the fact that a lot of these new features, the features that were specifically brought to the Pixel 9 line of devices, I'm not going to call them gimmicks, but what I will say is they're things that I'm probably not going to use all that often. For me, Pixels are sort of almost defined by how many features they have that I actually use. If I was going to sit down and take an average Samsung phone like a Z Fold and a more recent Pixel phone and start just naming how many features they have, the Samsung phone is going to have more total features. But the Pixel phone is going to have more features that I actually use on a day-to-day basis. With the Pixel 9, we did add things like Pixel Studio, Pixel Screenshots, Gemini Live. There's a new weather application. The problem is the vast majority of these new features, and there are more than just that, the vast majority of them are features that I just don't actually find myself using very often, and some of them are actually, for me, full stop downgrades of what we used to have. The weather application is, to me, just worse than the weather application that we had before. Pixel Studio, something that's going to be useful here and there sporadically. It just depends on how often you feel like you need an image to punctuate a joke you might be making in a message or something like that. Pixel Screenshots, something I was actually very excited about, but in practice, I just don't find useful because I keep all my photos in Google Photos. I keep them all in the cloud, right? I periodically go into Google Photos and I clear up space, deleting the photos from my phone because I don't need them on my phone. They're in the cloud. But for Pixel Screenshots to see them and scan them, they have to be on my phone. So I'm kind of caught in this weird no man's land. Again, all of these features are varying degrees of fine. Some of them are quite good, and you may really love Pixel Screenshots or Studio, whatever it might be. But for me, I'm just finding that I'm not using many of these new features at all. Back on the good side of things, this screen, ladies and gentlemen, is absolutely magnificent. This is a fantastic screen, and the greatest thing about it is the brightness. When you go outside into bright sunlight, this thing absolutely does not skip a beat. I have gone on quite a few walks on trails outside. I'm using this thing, I'm taking photos with it, and it has literally performed better than any screen that I have ever used. And what's more, it maintains that brightness. You're seeing a time lapse right now of this phone next to the Galaxy S23 Ultra, and for 5 straight minutes in direct sunlight, it's in the upper 80s here in East Tennessee. It doesn't blink, it doesn't dim, as far as I can tell. It stays at that brightness the entire time. That is awesome. Let's talk about peak performance. So I really want to stress to you that in normal, everyday, day-to-day performance, this thing is going to be just as fast, if not faster, than any other phone on the market. I can sit here and I can open up different applications, and I know that some people they roll their eyes over this, but I think that it's driving home an important point, okay? When you're just using this phone for normal stuff, it's not going to ever feel slow, and often it's going to feel really fast. This is a Galaxy Z Fold 6. It has a very new processor, and it is a processor that is much faster than this processor, and yet, as I go through this, you're just not going to see that often bear itself out. In that instance, you did. But by and large, it is an extremely snappy, fast phone. However, if we are talking about peak performance, edge case, so this is graphically intensive stuff, it is absolutely going to lag behind by a large amount. The Tensor G4 has just not caught up. So this is the Wildlife Extreme stress test. And basically what this does is it runs this graphics test over and over, loop after loop, and it gives you a score each round, and it shows you the thermals and things like that. And what you're seeing here is that the Z Fold 6 is absolutely destroying the Pixel 9 Pro XL. In fact, the worst loop at the very end here, let's say this one is 2611. So what's happened is this device has gotten hotter, so performance has dropped. That worst loop is better than the best loop score on the Pixel 9 Pro XL. And that will bear itself out when you're doing things like gaming or when you're doing things like processing video. Just like you saw in my Pixel 9 Pro Fold video, it's just going to lag behind on those types of things. But we can kind of use this score to parlay things into another thing, which is actually on the positive side. I will also point out that stability is actually much higher over here on the Pixel, which is pretty interesting. But if we scroll down here, I'm going to point a couple of things out to you. First off, on the Z Fold 6, we lost 10% battery, and we went from 29 degrees to 39 degrees. Okay, so that is kind of a benchmark for what a modern phone is doing. On the Pixel, we lost 11% off of our battery, and we got from 35 degrees, so it actually started warmer, probably because I had been using it as my phone, and we got up to 43 degrees. When I ran the same test on the Pixel 9 Pro Fold, we actually only got up to 41 degrees. So just kind of keep that in mind. This one started warmer, so don't freak out too much about that 4 extra degrees when this device is thinner and has the exact same processor and stopped at 41 in another test. I would say right around 41 to 43 is absolutely fine. And to give you one more data point, the OnePlus Open, same test, was at 41 degrees as well. What am I getting at? What's the point of this? The point is that if you take that and you factor in the fact that it was able to stick to its peak brightness for 5 straight minutes in direct sun in the upper 80s without overheating and dimming, it seems like, to a large degree, the thermal issues of these Tensor processors has been pretty greatly reduced. Just like my time with the Pixel 9 Pro Fold, as I'm using this phone, what I'm not experiencing is it feeling significantly warm in my hand, warmer than any other phone. It does really feel like they've come a long way. We have a vapor chamber, we have a 4 nanometer process, we have a more efficient modem. We'll talk a bit more about the effects of that later on in this video, but again, it seems like those thermals, they're not perfect. No phone's thermals are, but they've been reined in where, to me, this feels like any other phone. Sometimes using really good tech kind of ruins you on things that aren't quite as amazing. The OnePlus Open is one of those instances where that 67 watt wired charging has kind of spoiled me to the degree that, guys, we're looking at 37 watt charging on the Pixel 9 Pro Fold, and I just don't think that's fast enough anymore. Obviously, it's worse on the Fold at only 21 watts. This is definitely an improvement over that. But when you look around at the other flagships available, it is just well past time for companies like Google to still be charging in the 30s. Okay, we need to be faster than that. Even Samsung is charging at 45 watts on their Ultra phones. We have to put that in the negative category. On my second day with this phone, it was fully charged at 10 p.m. and I did not plug it in after that. I put it on my bedside table and I left it there. I picked it up sometime around 7 in the morning and I used it all day. Now, granted, this was not a heavy use day. I think that I only had like 5 hours of screen on time, something like that, 4 hours and 50 something minutes if I'm remembering correctly. It was the day that I had off with my wife, so I wasn't really on my phone as much as I normally would be when I'm off and she's at work and I'm here working and I'm on my phone a lot. Anyways, 10 p.m. all the way around. I went to bed that night at 10 p.m. The phone had not been charged for a single second, a full 24 hours, almost 5 hours of screen on time, some photography. We went on a walk. We're outside taking some photos. You'll see some of those photos later on in another category. I still had 37% battery when I plugged in that night. Guys, I'm not going to give you like scientific numbers on what the battery life is on this phone. What I will tell you is it is among the best of all the phones that I have tested in terms of longevity. And I'm only about 4 days in, and Android phones sometimes do get better over time, but already I can tell you this thing is an absolute battery monster. It is right there with Samsung's Ultra phones. Absolutely phenomenal battery life. One thing that I'm slightly disappointed in is going to be the speaker performance. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not bad, but the biggest problem that I have is while, yes, it is just as loud as something like my S23 Ultra, what it does do that my Samsung phone doesn't do is distort at high volume levels. And for the last good thing we're going to mention, we just have to talk about the cameras. Now look, this is not some radical improvement over the Pixel 8 Pro or heck, even over the Pixel 7 Pro, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. These cameras are among the best around, in particular for still photos. The primary sensor is great. The shutter speed is extremely fast, able to capture a barking dog in mid-bark with tack sharpness. It's able to replicate colors quite well. We all have our complaints with Pixel cameras, right? Sometimes there's too much sharpness, sometimes there's too much contrast, but these cameras are fantastic. Even zoomed in 5x, things look really, really good. The new ultra wide does a pretty solid job as well, and even video has seen its fair share of improvement. Rosie, that's not our yard. Be good. For my last negative, it's a camera thing as well. It's something that I really wish Google would fix, and it is the very janky, very sort of herky-jerky, annoying, noticeable transition between your different lenses. Going from the 1x to the 5x looks absolutely terrible. We need a smooth transition on that camera. So guys, there you go. Those are my thoughts on the Pixel 9 Pro XL. Overall, it's got to rank up very, very highly. You know, there's so much to like about this phone. It is such a rock solid phone. It's no real surprise to me now that I have it that I'm seeing so much positivity around it. It is absolutely one of the best phones of the year. Now, guys, I do got to let you know that this phone was given to me by Google as I am a member of Team Pixel, so they provided me this phone for review. But please rest assured that I am giving you all of my honest opinions, and I signed no agreement telling me that I couldn't be honest or that I couldn't compare it to this phone or that phone. Obviously, I compared it to a couple of Samsung phones in this video. We talked about a OnePlus phone, so clearly I'm not beholden to any sort of weird rules when it comes to that stuff. So, guys, thanks for watching. Subscribe for more content just like this, and until next time, stay nerdy, my friends.